Welcome Junior Techies, my name is Mrs. Ramla. This video I've prepared for the grade 12s to help them with their final exam preparation. In this video I'm going to look at the Mpumalanga Prelim Paper 1, 2021 paper. Before you watch the video, make sure you have the question paper and the memo at hand. Right, give the correct biological term for each of the following descriptions. Write on only the term next to the question number. 121. The hormone that stimulates oogenesis. Now, what is the hormone that stimulates oogenesis, which is the formation of an ovary? Follicle stimulating hormone. I would not like to say FSH. It's very easy to confuse the letters when you're stressed out, so I would write the whole term out. 122. The period of development of the fetus until birth. Very important. Gestation. 123. A structure in the female reproductive system where semen is deposited, that is the vagina. 124. The branch outgrowth of a neuron, that transmits nerve impulses to the cell body of the same neuron, that's dendrite. 125. The growth movement of part of a plant in response to gravity, that's easy to remember. Geo for gravity, so geotropism. The memo also accepts gravitropism. 126. The hormone that regulates salt balance in the body, that's aldosterone. 128. A type of vision in which both eyes are used together to focus on an object is binocular vision. But hang on, I skipped up on 127. So 127. A branch of the nervous system that consists of cranial and spinal nerves, peripheral nervous system. Right. 129. A part of the brain that regulates the temperature, that we know, hypothalamus. And the liquid between the cornea and the lens in the eye, aqueous humor. As soon as they say liquid, we know it's aqueous. Right. 1.3. Indicate whether each of the statements in column 1 applies to A only, B only, both A and B or none of the items in column 2. Write A only, B only, both A and B or none next to the question number. Right. 131. The location of the receptors that are stimulated when carbon dioxide level changes. Now, where are these receptors? We know they are found in the carotid artery in the neck. So your answer is obviously A only. 132. The hormone that is in excess in a person that grows abnormally tall. Now, when a person grows abnormally tall, from its name, grow, that's growth hormone. But it's not TSH or LH. So your answer is none. 133. A hormone that stimulates an increase in the blood glucose level. That will obviously stimulate an increase in the blood glucose level. It's not insulin or ADH, so your answer is none. We know it's glucagon. And then 134. A type of lens used to correct short-sightedness or myopia. We know that's a biconcave lens, so your answer is B only. Right, 1.4. The diagram below represents an amniotic egg. 141. Identify the extraembryonic membrane A. A, you can see, is the membrane that surrounds the embryo. It's the amnion. Identify the extraembryonic membrane D. That we know, you see, it's around the amnion, so it's the chorion. And then 142. Give the letter name of the part that is responsible for storing waste. That we know is C and the allantois. And then 143, give the name of the part that contains nutrition for the developing embryo, and that is the yolk sac. Right. Now, 1.5. The diagram below represents male and female gametes during a process in the female reproductive system. And in the picture, you can see the sperm and the ovum and the process of fertilization that's probably about to take place. So, 151, name the process shown in the diagram. Well, I just mentioned it now, fertilization. 152, where does the process normally occur in the female reproductive system? That we know is the fallopian tube. 153, identify part C. Now, part C is part of the ovum and it's the outer layer. We know it's the jelly layer. Identify part E. Part E is part of the sperm and we know it's directly below the acrosome. It's the nucleus. 154. Give the name of the organelles found in large supply in part A. That's the middle piece. So that must be the organelle, the mitochondria. And 155, write down 2 letters of the structure that contain 23 chromosomes. That could obviously only be D, the female nucleus, the ovum nucleus, and then the sperm nucleus, which is letter E. All right. Right, that was not too bad for question 1. Let's get down to question 2. The diagram below represents the male reproductive system. 2.1.1. Give letters and names of the 2 parts that transport sperm. What 2 parts transport sperm? So, from here, it's this part that will transport sperm. So, what letter is that? They want the letters and the name. We can see, of course, it's C, that's the vas deferens. And then we can see the vas deferens enters the penis and becomes D, which is the urethra. 2.212. State one function of the fluid in semen produced by gland A. Now, gland A is the seminal vesicles. What's the function? The seminal vesicles has a thick yellowish liquid rich in fructose, and the fructose provides the sperm with nutrients. Right. State one function of the fluid produced by gland B. Where's gland B? Gland B is directly below the bladder. And we know gland B is the prostate gland. And the prostate gland secretes a milky alkaline liquid to neutralize the acid in the female's vagina or in the male's body. Right, so that's done. 213. Explain why it's necessary for part E to be outside the male's body. Now, part E is the testes. Now, why must the testes be outside the man's body? Because sperm can only be produced at 2 degrees below body temperature. But remember, always say normal, healthy sperm can only be produced at 2 degrees below body temperature. Right. 214. It is common in older men for gland B to enlarge, the prostate gland to enlarge. Yes. State the reason why they would normally have trouble urinating. Now, if this gland enlarges, what happens is it puts pressure on the urethra, and obviously it will be closed off and the urine won't be able to come out. So that's where the pressure and the problem with urinating comes in. 215. Describe the process where sperm is produced in males. That's 4 marks. That's spermatogenesis. That's in your exam guidelines. You make sure you memorize this and go into your exam knowing this. So, under the influence of testosterone, diploid cells in the seminiferous tubules of the testes undergo meiosis to form haploid sperm. Right. 2.2. The table below indicates the blood hormone levels in the female during menstrual cycle. Now, in this table, you can see the hormone levels during a menstrual cycle. You can see in the first column, day. Then you can see the estrogen levels and the progesterone levels. Then you have your unit. Now, 2.2.1. Draw a line graph representing the levels of estrogen during the menstrual cycle. So they only want this. So you read your questions carefully. So what do they want? Estrogen levels during menstrual cycle. Estrogen levels for dependent variable over time in days. And then you plot your graph. You get a mark for the heading, type of graph, correct labels and unit, correct scale, and all 6 points are correctly plotted in the graph. So, nice question. 2.2.2. Using evidence from the table, explain why it can be concluded that ovulation took place on day 14. Now, how do you know that ovulation took place on day 14? Okay, so look at it. Can you see now what has happened from day 14? We can see from day 14, the progesterone levels increase. What caused that to happen? The corpus luteum has formed. Straightforward. Not too bad. Using evidence from the table, explain why it can be concluded that fertilization took place during this menstrual cycle. Now, can you see 24th and 28th day, what has happened? The progesterone levels are remaining high. What does that mean? The corpus luteum did not degenerate, and of course, it's making the endometrium lining more thicker, more vascular, more glandular for implantation. Nice question. 2.3. The diagrams below shows a female reproductive system during pregnancy. 231. Identify part A. Look carefully at part A. It's that whole area. That is the placenta. 232. Name the blood vessel found in part B that transports oxygen to the fetus. That's the umbilical vein. Never just say vein. You say umbilical vein. 233. That was 2.3.2. Let's go to 233. Explain one way in which part C is structurally suited to perform its function. That, of course, is the myometrium. So let's look at the myometrium. All right. Here, the memo has myometrium and uterus. So, because it talks about the uterus being a hollow organ to accommodate the developing fetus. We can see it's very tough in the label to differentiate between the uterus and the myometrium. So there you can see the memo accepted both answers or all answers, which is good. The uterus is a muscular organ. Here they're talking about the myometrium, so it can contract and relax during birth. And then the myometrium of the uterus is made up of elastic muscles that can stretch to accommodate the developing baby. So in a case like this, when they cannot differentiate between the uterus and the myometrium, you write all answers. I would write this adaptation down of the uterus and remember it. 234. A female drank alcohol during her pregnancy. Her child was born with poor coordination of movement. The mother was told that the child has fetal alcohol syndrome as a result of her drinking alcohol during pregnancy. Describe how the alcohol reaches the fetus from the mother. Very nice question. So how does the alcohol reach the fetus? Because it diffuses from the mother's blood through the placenta, and then it's transported by the umbilical vein to the fetus. Nice question. B. Explain why it can be concluded that it is the brain that was affected by the use of alcohol during the development of the fetus. Now, can you see it says poor motor coordination, right? So, of course, which part of the brain is responsible for that? The cerebellum, and the cerebellum is part of the brain. 241. So 2.4, the diagram below shows the location of some endocrine glands. 2.4.1, mention one hormone that is secreted by gland C. Gland 3, not gland C, but gland 3. Gland 3 is the adrenal gland. So what is the name, the hormone that's secreted? You could have said adrenaline or aldosterone. 2.4.2, state two functions of the hormone secreted by part 4. Part 4 is the pancreas. So what's the functions? Stimulates conversion of glycogen to glucose, which will increase the blood glucose levels, or stimulates the conversion of glucose to glycogen and reduces the blood glucose level and stimulates the absorption of glucose by the cells. So that's the two options you could have had. Right. 2.4.3. Describe how gland 2, which is the thyroid gland, functions during an emergency. So the thyroid gland secretes thyroxine, which stimulates an increase in the metabolic rate or cell respiration, which provides more energy for flight or fright. Now, 2.4.4. Suggest two symptoms that will be experienced by a person who has ADH deficiency. Now, symptoms, there will be extremely large amounts of urine or volume of urine, and the person will feel very thirsty or drink a lot of liquid. 2.4.5. Identify gland 1, 2, 3, or 4 that secretes TSH. That's easy. It's gland 1. And then 2.4.6. Explain why a person might gain weight if the gland mentioned in 2.4.5 fails to produce TSH. So what's going to happen? There will be less thyroid stimulating hormone. So the thyroid gland will produce less thyroxine. Less thyroxine will stimulate a decrease in metabolic activities. Less glucose is used, and it will be stored as fat. Right, nice question. Okay, 2.5. The diagram below represents a part of the human skin. 2.5.1. Identify part 1. Part 1 you can see is the sweat pore. 2.5.2. Explain the effect on thermoregulation if part 2, which is the blood vessels, remain dilated in the cone environment. So now, if it remains dilated, blood flow to the skin will remain high. More heat will be lost to the surface of the skin. The body temperature will decrease below normal. Very nice question. 2.5.3. Describe how part 3, which is the sweat gland, is involved in thermoregulation on a hot day. So what happens? That the sweat gland is active, produces more sweat, and more heat is lost by evaporation. Right. Question 3. 3.1. A lady did an investigation to determine the effect of light on the direction of growth on young stems. The procedure was done as follows. 300 bean seeds were planted under the same environmental conditions for 7 days. They were divided into 3 equal groups, A, B, and C. Group A was left as is. Group B, the stem was covered in a black plastic that does not allow light to pass through, but the tip of the shoot was uncovered, as you can see in the picture. Group C, the tip of the stem was covered with a black plastic. All 3 groups were exposed to unilateral light and covered with boxes to eliminate other light sources. After 7 days, the growth of the shoots were observed. The diagram shows how the investigation was set up. 3.1.1. Identify the dependent variable in this investigation. So what are you measuring here? You are measuring, as you can see, right, the direction of growth of the young stems or the shoots. 3.1.2. State 2 ways in which the validity of the investigation was improved. So what did they do? How it was improved. They used the same species of seeds, right, which was the bean seed. The bean seeds were grown under the same environmental conditions. The beans were the same age. They were grown for 7 days. They used the same type of black plastic bag. All were covered with a box. All the seeds were exposed to light from the same direction. And the observation done was at the same time. Make sure it's taken from the passage. 3.1.3. State why 300 seeds were used in the investigation. We know with 300 seeds, that increases reliability. 3.1.4. Explain the results that would be observed in the plants in Group B. So Group B now, what happened? We know auxin from the tip of the stem moves to the dark side. Right? There will be a high concentration of auxin on this side, which will stimulate cell growth or cell elongation. This uneven growth will cause the stem to bend towards light. So that's what's going to happen. Explain the results will be observed for the plants in Group C. Now, Group C, auxin is still produced at the tips, but it moves down slowly, which will cause the stem to grow slowly upwards. Right, nice question. 3.2. The diagram below represents a human reflex arc. 3.2.1. Identify neuron A. Now, neuron A, as you can see, it's in the spinal cord. So that can only be the interneuron or the connector neuron. 3.2.2. Differentiate between a reflex arc and a reflex action. So action and arc. A reflex action is a fast automatic response to a stimulus, whereas a reflex arc is the path taken by an impulse during a reflex action. Right. 3.2.3. Describe the reflex action that occurs as represented in the diagram. So what happens here when the person touches the hot pot? So we know the receptor in the finger will receive the stimulus of heat. You could have said pain, and then converts it to an impulse. The sensory neuron will carry the impulse from the receptor to the interneuron, right? And then the interneuron will transmit the impulse to the motor neuron, and then the motor neuron will carry the impulse to the effector, which will cause the muscle to contract and move the finger away. 3.2.4. Explain what happened to the person if neuron B was damaged. Now, what's neuron B? Neuron B is the motor neuron. What will happen? The person can feel the stimulus, but won't be able to respond. Right. 3.3. The diagram below shows the front view of the human eye. 3.3. Identify part 1. Now, part 1 is the white part of the eye, so that's the sclera. 3.3.2. State one function of part 2. Part 2 is the iris. So what's the function of the iris? The iris controls the amount of light or controls the size of the pupil. 3.3.3. Name and describe the mechanism that occurs to cause the changes in the size of part 3, which is the pupil, from diagram A to B. So the pupil goes from becoming constricted to dilated. What happens here? So that's known as the pupillary mechanism. The radial muscle will contract, the circular muscle relaxes, and what happens, as you can see, the pupil dilates to let more light in. So the person is going from bright light to dim light. 3.3.4. Explain why a person with a cataract becomes blind. Now, a cataract, what happens is the lens becomes cloudy. Now, the lens is supposed to be transparent to let light pass through. Now, if it's cloudy, light cannot pass through, cannot stimulate the receptors, and so of course the person becomes blind. 3.4. Hearing is one of the major senses. Describe the process of hearing. This, if you're watching all my videos, learners, is a question that's coming out a lot. I hope you write this down. The pinna of the ear traps sound waves. The auditory canal directs the sound waves to the tympanic membrane. The sound waves cause the tympanic membrane to vibrate. The vibration of the tympanic membrane causes the ossicles to vibrate. The ossicles pass the vibration to the oval window. The vibration of the oval window causes pressure waves in the inner ear, or the perilymph or the endolumph. The pressure waves stimulate the organ of Corti. The organ of Corti converts the stimulus into a nerve impulse, and the auditory nerve will transmit the impulses to the cerebrum for interpretation. Write this answer down and learn it. 3.4.2. Explain why the tympanic membrane may burst if the eustachian tube is blocked. This is also a question that comes out a lot. The pressure will not be equalized on either side of the tympanic membrane, right? Because of the buildup of the pressure in the middle ear, this may cause the tympanic membrane to burst. 3.4.3. Explain why a child with a grommet may not go for swimming in the first 2 weeks. Now we know when you're swimming what will happen. Water will enter the middle ear and it won't drain out. This will result in more water building up in the middle ear. The middle ear cannot dry out. It can result in a middle ear infection, and with this there can be temporary loss of hearing. Okay, it can prevent transmission of impulses, and so it also can prevent hearing as well for the little child. 3.5. The diagram below represents a part of the human brain. 3.5.1. Identify part B. Now look at part B. Part B we know is the corpus callosum. Make sure you don't write corpus luteum. You concentrate here when you're writing the parts of the brain. 3.5.2. State 2 functions of part D. Part D is the cerebellum. So the cerebellum coordinates all voluntary movement and controls muscle tension due to balance. 3.5.3. A man has an accident that caused a head injury while cycling. The doctors measure his carbon dioxide levels in his blood as well as his blood pH over an hour. The levels of the carbon dioxide remained above normal and the blood pH was lower than normal. A. Give the letter of the part of the brain that was affected in the accident according to the information above. Now, that, of course, is the medulla oblongata, and that's C. B. Explain why the person might die if the blood pH remains below the normal levels. Because the enzymes in the blood will denature, and we know that enzymes control all the metabolic reactions, so it will slow down and the person can die. 3.5.4. Give the letter and name of the part of the brain that's mainly affected when a person has Alzheimer's. Now, Alzheimer's, some of the symptoms are memory loss, so that obviously is controlled by your cerebrum. They wanted the letter and the name. Well, thank you, Junior Tuckies, for watching this video. I hope you learned a lot. Join me and watch all my other videos as well.